Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So Richemont, like a lot of the other larger luxury conglomerates, are experiencing a bit of a slump. Richemont missed their profit forecasts, and I thought we'd take a look. Now, it's not as devastating as, say, a Kering. Richemont is very different than, say, like an LVMH or a Kering. There has year over year been a decline in sales in comparison to 2024 versus 2023. But I think an important point that we are seeing in the reports here is there has been a dip in the operating profit. So what this means is the money left after paying all of their business costs. While the sales are 10.1 billion euros, down 1% from last year, the operating profit at 2.2 billion euros is down 17% from last year. So let's talk a little bit about what's been going down at Richemont, why this is. And there's two major things I also want to mention here. They've also recently acquired the Italian jewelry maison Vernier. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, and I do apologize any further mispronunciations that happen here. But they also signed an agreement with Mytheresa where they will acquire Yoox Net-a-Porter in exchange for a 33% equity stake in Mytheresa. They also appointed a new CEO, Nicolas Boss, who was previously the CEO of Van Cleef Arpels. When it comes to these houses, the jewelry houses are actually a bright spot here. They're up 2%. When it came to Buccellati, again, apologies, I'm probably mispronouncing that, as well as Cartier, as well as Van Cleef Arpels. This is their largest sector. Overall, they have been resilient in this category. In terms of the products that they mentioned in the reports, they highlight Buccellati's Opera Tulle and Macri collections. This is not a brand I'm too familiar with. I can kind of see the Van Cleef Arpels customer here with some of those floral motifs, very pretty jewelry, and I can see in a period where customers are a little bit more discerning and want things that are long-term investments, it makes sense why more people want to buy fine jewelry. For Cartier, they highlight their Trinity, their Clash, their Panthier, as well as their Santos collections. For Van Cleef, it's the Alhambra, the Pearly, and the floral lines. They've also highlighted how the high jewelry lines for Cartier and Van Cleef have done also well year over year. They've also noted in the report, though, that they have limited their price increases, but over the recent months, there has been actually an increase in the cost of raw materials, especially gold. So it makes me wonder, will there be price increases in this sector? Now, in the category of watches, they're down by 17%. So this from the report, they state, while the Maison showed various degrees of resilience depending on regional exposure and product mix, the collections they highlighted were the Eternal Calendar by IWC, the world's most complicated watch at Vacheron Constantin, the Berkeley Grand Complication, and the thinnest tourbillon with Piaget's Altiplano Ultimate Concept. I'm not gonna lie, when I read this, it's like a whole other language to me, but from the reports they cite that the Asia Pacific region sales have declined, specifically in China. They mentioned how they want to be cautious about overproducing / they want to drive up product desirability with this move.
Well, China is weighing on all the luxury groups, and we've seen that with Richemont. Jewellery is holding up, but watch demand has really come under pressure, and it's really that lack of demand for watches that is behind the weakness.
And China in particular then,
yes.
Or do we know? Because they talk about Asia, but we suspect that's China.
It's really China. It's China and it's watches. There is less demand for those, upmarket watches, IWC, A. Lange & Söhne, Panerai, all those types of models.
And then they have their what's called other business category. So sales were up 4%, but there was a minus 2% operating margin. They specifically cite Alaya's La Ballerine and La Teco bags as doing well. Both of these products, especially those ballerina shoes, definitely doing very well. They also highlighted Alaya's Spring 2025 collection, as well as they've highlighted the collection by Chloe's Chimena Kamali. They also mention the success of the brand Peter Millar. One other thing, though, to mention is the other category, which encompasses fashion, shoes, other accessories. They did experience a 52 million euro operating loss, and 23 million actually came from the fashion and accessory houses due to an investment to boost the desirability of these fashion houses. The report also emphasizes how Richemont will continue to strengthen their portfolio of jewelry houses, though. Again, they've acquired Vernier, and so they really want to focus on this category, which I think makes makes sense. Richemont has even done better than LVMH. If you look at LVMH's jewelry and watches category, it's not doing nearly as well. What Richemont is doing with the jewelry line, at least, they found a lot of success with how they've run their jewelry houses. I think that makes sense that they really want to focus on that category as opposed to going into other ventures. And I also noted last quarter how Bernard Arnault has taken his own personal interest in Richemont, adding Richemont to his own personal portfolio, and has specifically cited what Richemont has done when it's come to jewelry, be it Van Cleef and Cartier specifically, the success there. And I'm sure that Bernard Arnault would like to take a page from what Richemont is doing, or maybe something even further, who knows. Now, when it came to regions, Europe was up by 4% due to local as well as tourist spending. The sales in America grew by 10%. They actually specifically cite jewelry and the other business categories doing well. Middle East and Africa were up by 11%. Japan grew by 32%, but they also state that a lot of the growth in these regions were offset by the decrease in sales in the Asia Pacific region, minus Japan at a 19% decrease, where China impacted this the most. They did mention how there was growth in Korea and Malaysia. We've discussed in previous reports, Chinese tourists, many of them have decided to do their shopping in Japan if they are going to do luxury shopping due to the weakened yen. So again, that's why we see that 32% increase in Japan. And this is not just Richemont, this is with many of these other luxury conglomerates as well. They cite how retail sales grew everywhere except Asia, and the direct-to-client sales, they're up at 76%. Now, I mentioned earlier the operating profit, and they did mention in the report a few times how the cost of raw materials, in particular gold, has made it so that there is a higher production cost, and as well as unfavorable exchange rates. But they also mention how selling and distribution expenses increased by 6%. Their communication expenses grew by 4%. The Watches and Wonder event took place in Geneva. There was a cost in that. Administrative costs went up by 7%. They state partially reflecting the valuation adjustment on acquisitions and higher salary costs across the group. And again, it also has to be stated the acquisition of Vernier as well as the sale of Yoox Net-a-Porter, there's that as well. What the key takeaway for me is when I look at this report is jewelry is their largest category. Even in tougher economic times, a more discerning customer sees the value in like a jewelry piece over a lot of those like trendier fashion pieces. But we are also seeing some bright spots in the other sector. It is worth noting the operating profit has gone down for Richemont, as well as how Richemont has missed the estimates, which is, I think, a larger trend with these multi-brand luxury conglomerates. Overall, Richemont, because they have jewelry lines that I think are still very highly desirable, they will continue to remain resilient. That's pretty much my video for today, guys. I would love to know your thoughts. Are you a fan of any of these brands? Have you purchased anything from any of these jewelry or watch brands or fashion brands? Please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.